I tell people Monopoly, I look at it both ways, right? If you play Monopoly and nobody ever bought real estate, everybody would win.
Mm.
But because unfortunately people are buying, so all the people out there who are like, yo, I'm not buying no real estate, I'm not doing it. You can't win at Monopoly unless everybody agrees not to buy real estate.
What's up, y'all? This your boy Malcolm Mox everywhere in your vibe, and I'm here again with another episode of the Principal Protocol, where we talk about business, entrepreneurship, tech, and sometimes politics, right? And I have the wonderful Miss Alicia Cooper Wells, who is a brilliant mind in entrepreneurship, real estate, credit, funding. It's like whatever you need, she got you. Whatever you need, she got you. You know what I mean? So and she's a content creator and she does rebar bending as well with fire. How does that go? How does that go again?
Yeah, so I do a lot of mindset coaching and I am a firewalk instructor. But the rebar bending, I teach individuals that it's about the power of partnership. And rebar houses, sidewalks are made out of it. You can't bend it by yourself, but you can bend it from the softest part of your throat with the help of another
Mm.
person.
Look at that. See, we about to have a good conversation. We're gonna talk about all that. So, real quick, Alicia, tell the people who you are, where you from, and what got you to the point where we having this conversation today.
All right, awesome. Well, first, thank you so much, Malcolm, for giving me the opportunity to come on here and just tell people what I do. My name is Alicia Cooper Wells. I'm also known as Miss Cooper Home Loans. I am a wife, a mother, a serial entrepreneur, and I really love helping people reach their goals through real estate. That's my jam. And I'm originally from Flint, Michigan, but I've been in Delaware pretty much the majority of my life, just leaving for high school. I mean, leaving here short term for college and back here in Delaware, where I get to say a lot of things happen in this little state. We have so many resources because we get access to things that big states have here in Delaware. But for me, I was a single mom who, dropped out of college and had an opportunity to buy real estate, and it really changed my life.
Mm.
And I take that passion to really help others, particularly women. I work a lot with women to provide them the mindset, the hope. But most importantly, I am a result driven person.
Yes,
So
you
I
are.
want them to have the results that are necessary to win.
Yo, so that's interesting. Flint all the way to Delaware. Just what? Why Flint from Delaware?
I mean, I don't really have much to do with that part of the story because I was a kid. So my parents simply moved. My parents met actually in college in Michigan. My dad is from Michigan. My mom was from Philly. So we really moved back this way on the East Coast to be closer to her support system. And that just leads into why I tell people my parents leaned on their village and they have created some amazing and successful children.
Hmm.
And that has instilled in me the power of partnership, the power of leaning on your vision, village, and not being afraid to ask for help.
Nah, because you definitely do that, and I've seen you do it, and I've seen you collaborate with multiple people across the board. As long as I've been knowing you. So, real quick, just talk about, you said you were a single mom and real estate really changed your life. Tell the folks that story. Like, what was that piece of real estate that you bought initially, and what was the process behind that to really kind of get your career started and take you to a whole nother level?
All right, awesome. So I was a college dropout coming home my freshman year of college with a baby, and really being met with obstacles I didn't expect. Being a new mom, ended up moving into subsidized housing, getting on welfare at the time, just things that I just never seen for myself. Um, and then really feeling a place of despair, like, how will I ever be able to get out of that? And it didn't actually start with real estate. It really started with taking a risk, that
Mm.
I had to accept a dollar raise, or chose to accept a dollar raise at work. So I was working as a bank teller, and they wanted to promote me into customer service, and doing mortgages. And I was going to have to take a dollar raise. Well, that dollar
Mm.
raise, I knew I was jeopardizing my child care, my food
Mm.
stamps.
Mm.
And I ended up taking that dollar. And in my mind, I had calculated how I was going to make it work, but being cut from all my services like that was
Mm.
devastating, because that dollar raise did not equal the difference in me having childcare, having health care, having food stamps. And my life really got tough. I mean,
Mm.
super tough. Um, Even down to my son, he was about 5 years old. He would have to let himself in, because there was about a 30-minute difference from when I got home from work and when he would have to walk himself into the house. And I'll be like, yo, don't open that door for nobody, right? And I got caught by one of my girlfriends. She had a headache. She worked in Wilmington, and I lived in the projects, not too far. She was like, yo, can I take a nap at your house? I was like, yeah, I leave my door unlocked. She's like, yo, you leave your door unlocked? I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. Just go, you can go there, take you a nap. So she's taking her nap, and then she wakes up abruptly and she calls me. She's like, yo, your son just walked through the door and I'm the only one here. This is crazy. Like, she really like guilted me for a moment. And I remember acting surprised on that phone. Like, girl, is he there? Is he there? I don't know how that happened. Just watch him. I'll be there in about 30 minutes, right? But this had already been little Randy and I's routine,
Right.
because we had not had any services. Like, we're just trying to make it work from the muscle. And but by taking that dollar raise and moving into the mortgage department, it did allow an opportunity for me to buy a home.
Mm.
So I bought my first home, actually right around the corner from the projects. And I tell people I would have never been able to do it without taking that initial risk. And it also
Mm.
opened me up to be willing to take risks, because I am still very, my husband calls me a pessimist. So I still am I have a very low risk tolerance when it comes to risk. I like to really calculate my steps. But I did learn in that moment, and again, not at that moment but within that moment, right, reflecting
Mhm.
that it's you do have to take risk in order to become successful. So I'm gonna fast forward. Bought that house and actually never moved into it.
Mm.
So I was packing up to move in, closed, and my son, I would wash the dishes and I would actually load them into the dishwasher, and he was sitting on the door of the dishwasher. And I looked down at him and I was like, I'm not ready to be a homeowner.
Mm.
Because that moment let me see that if I had not, I'm not ready. And then I hadn't even conditioned my son at the time, on how, yo, if that dishwasher door breaks, we have to fix it now as a homeowner. So I decided to reach out to the Wilmington Housing Authority, which was part of my journey of being able to buy a house. And I let them know I'm not really ready, but I had already signed on the dotted line. And they like,
Mhm.
yo, you can't go back. It don't quite work like
Right.
that. But what they did help me do is find a tenant. And
Mm.
I actually ended up staying in subsidized housing, I want to say for another 3 years. And I
Mm.
mean, some things really happened that were like catastrophic. Somebody had got shot on my steps. And I'm like, yo, did I make the right decision? Like, life is life. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I want anybody watching this to know life will life while you are going through. Okay. Like,
Facts.
and you will be like, man, did I make the right decision along
Right.
the journey? And again, hindsight being 2020, I did make the right decision. When it was time for me to actually move, I decided that I was going to sell the property. I sold the property. I made about $30,000. I would have, there's no way from a bank teller to just a little mortgage rep at a bank, I would have ever saved $30,000. And now I was able to take that money and buy another property and move my son into that property. Because even though somebody got shot on my steps in the projects, the house I bought was right around the corner. So
Right.
same stuff was still happening
Right.
um, over there too. So when we got to actually move into another neighborhood, but it also showed me that, yo, I can own real estate. I can
Mm-hmm.
be an investor. And I started really my investment journey prior to being a homeowner to live in. So I want to share with a lot of people right now because the market that we're in, most people
Crazy.
want to buy multifamilies. They're learning from the internet, like, and they're like, yo, I don't necessarily want to own a house to live in. And I'm here to tell you, I didn't. My first house, I didn't ever live in it. Never lived in it at all. And it was a blessing that the tenant that the Wilmington Housing Authority gave me, actually they helped her get into position to be able to buy that house. But I made a check of $30,000 and I used a portion of that to buy my next house. I used a portion of that to buy another house. And really that's how I started growing my real estate portfolio along this journey. But I just have to highlight the risk part, right? It was a lot of risk. I risked not getting my benefits. I
Mm-hmm.
risked my child and myself safety, him walking home by himself. Like there was a lot of risk along this journey for the people to see, who I am today. And I'm gonna, talk my talk, owning over 100
But
houses.
you've been through the struggle.
But I've been through the struggle and it took time, right? Like I didn't just like decide not to move in. That was a 3 year still in the project and every day understanding that I didn't just have to condition me, but I had to
Mm,
condition the people around me. I had to condition
mm,
my son that
mm.
we were going to be homeowners. So my girlfriends actually they would laugh at me because I told you I had packed up. So when I decided not to move and I was unpacking and I had given stuff away, because I'm like, it's like that story, like, yo, we getting out the hood.
Right, right, right.
And they were like, "Oh, so you're gonna go buy all new furniture?" Nope, Malcolm. We had a card table as our dining room table. We had just the blinds. We ain't had no
No
curtains.
curtains.
We had no curtains. Because I had decided that, yo, I'm gonna show my son that I gotta learn how to save money
Right.
because if the dishwasher broke, if the washing machine broke, that's now on me. I don't get to call the maintenance man.
Mm,
Now, there are things that I have learned along the way, like about warranties and to make the burden easier. And that's what I teach people along that it doesn't have to be as challenging as it was for me to take that leap because I've been through it. And there's a lot of other men and women who have been through it as well. But sometimes we believe like if something ain't good in our gut or if we don't if it's too risky, that
mhm,
means that we shouldn't do it, or if it
mhm,
doesn't work out
mhm,
the first try, that we
mhm.
shouldn't do it, right? Like when somebody got shot on my steps, I
You
definitely
was
was
like,
like, "Whoa,
oh, let
did
me
I
pull
meet
up
the
out of
right?"
this.
That's a sign, right?
Right.
But it's really that it was a sign that I was traveling a path that wasn't traveled much
Mm,
and nobody could really help me navigate and warn me that the snares and the things that were going to challenge me along that way were really helping me build a muscle. But I'm also a trailblazer. And that goes into like part of my firewalks that I do. I tell
Hold
people,
on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. We got to unpack so much stuff that you said before you go into the fireworks. We got to
okay,
unpack a lot. Okay, so the first thing I want to unpack, we're gonna go all the way back to when you that dollar raise, right? When you took that job, I want people to unpack this, or I want people to understand that one tidbit of information. You took that job for that $1, knowing that you were up against some odds once you got that raise, right? People think that you have to quit in order to be an entrepreneur, right? Number one, you don't have to quit your job in order to be an entrepreneur. And then number two, I don't want I don't want people to miss that. You probably learned some real skills when you took that job doing mortgage, which allowed you, like you say, you was building that muscle. Could you talk about those skills, working that job, understanding what you had against you? Like I said, working that job, what were those skills that you learned that helped you when you became an entrepreneur?
oh, definitely. So, well, first, I learned how to look, how I needed to look to the bank.
Mm.
Okay. So, I like to give actionable steps. So, I tell people I learned about the 4 C's of underwriting, that it was about not just how much cash I had or how much money I had, the first C being cash, it was also my credit.
Ooh, talk about it.
Okay. And
Talk
that
about it.
was really heavy. When I first started my journey that took that dollar raise, I had a 508 credit score,
Ooh,
right? I didn't know what I had. When I
right.
left college, I thought I left them credit cards there too. I
Ooh,
had.
ooh, yeah. We all
So,
got caught up in that. We all got caught up in that.
and so I had to work on that, right? It didn't hinder me from getting the job, but it would not that job also let me know how to access my credit report, how to
Right.
really see that, and then how they saw my credit. So in my mind, I thought I had to like this burden to take on everything and fix everything. I learned that no, the bank understands that too. They know the you might have a 580, but that doesn't mean you can't buy a house.
Right.
They doesn't mean that they view everything the same.
Right.
Every collection is not the same.
Right.
Every charge off is not the same. Everybody's situation based on the type of loan program you're applying for is not the same. So I was able to buy a house without having perfect credit,
Mm.
but I did have a journey ahead of me to get to that point of even being able to purchase. So the 4 C's, cash, and cash wasn't just how much money I had saved in my bank account. It was about how much, if I needed to use it for my expenses and for a down
Mm.
payment,
Kind of
how
like
much
working
could,
capital.
huh?
Kind of like working capital.
Yeah, like working capital, but I didn't have a business at that time, but it was like the working capital of my life, right? Like
Right.
my utilities, my budget, like what money I needed for that. So at the time, I remember I had tax money had came in. I had got like $3,000. I'm
Ooh, you was
excited.
balling. You was
And
balling.
I'm balling. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna buy a house. And
Mm-hmm.
then, but at that time, this before I looked at the credit,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, well, if we consider your expenses, and what I'm learning, I don't really have 3,000 because I'm gonna have to actually use some of that to pay the Verizon collection, right? And I'm gonna have to
Mm.
do some other things to get to that point. So I didn't really have enough money. Um, so again, going back to my job allowed me to learn how they viewed it and how to work through it. So I am of the personality of I want to know the workaround, right? Because I'm learning that clients that I thought were perfect and getting things, they're not. No one's perfect. But
Right.
how do we get them as close to the cookie cutter, or how do we get them to fit within the cookie cutter in order to get there? So it also then came down to the collateral, like what type of
Mm.
house I wanted to buy. A lot of times people are like, yo, I just need to buy a $60,000 house and I'll fix it up. Not understanding that the bank would rather, if you have had poor credit and have less money saved, rather you buy a better piece of collateral that's not going to break down. So they'd rather give you 200,000 for a house that's
Mm.
done than a house 60,000, and they know it's going to be a money pit because you don't have the money to keep doing that. You don't have the money to keep paying for repairs and electrical and
That's
HVAC.
information people do not know.
That's how the whole picture worked. But I learned that from my job, right? And
Mm.
then the last C was also my capacity.
Mm.
So that was like my debt to income ratio, how they viewed the type of income that I was making. A lot of entrepreneurs are met with the hurdle of not qualifying because they take their rightful tax deductions, right? Those are your rightful tax deductions. We're all learning how to play the tax game. But if you don't pay taxes on it, for most government loans, you're not going to qualify for their assistance or lower interest rates or lower
Mm.
down payments. So um it's a lot easier at my time and for many people to tackle getting your mortgage while you still have your job opposed to trying to do it later.
Oh boy, so much unpacking in that. And that's information that I didn't know. And I'm sure a lot of people like the four C's, they need to take some paper and write that down. You said cash, collateral, credit, and capacity. Did I get it right? I got
Yep,
it right, didn't I? Okay, good. So because they need to write that stuff down. Now you talked
you got it
about
right.
you good, good, good. Now you talked about your son sitting on the dishwasher door, and you talked about mindset. Can you unpack that reconditioning? What did you have to go through in order to really recondition the mind of yourself? You had to recondition the mind of your children, and you also had to recondition the minds of the folks who were around you. Just talk about some of the steps that you had to take in order to recondition your mind. So, you guys know how hard it is to get subscribers on YouTube, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get more subscribers on YouTube. So, if you're watching this podcast, just take a moment, go to Malcolm Locks on YouTube and go subscribe. Just go ahead and hit that bell over at YouTube and subscribe. You'll be able to see this podcast, all my gaming stuff, all my conversations, and so much more on my YouTube. So, all I need you to do is just go and subscribe. Hit that little button. I will greatly appreciate it if you did. Thanks.
Definitely. So the first was my son. And at that time, for him, I knew I was going to excuse what I'm about to say, break his face, right? If he had broke something at the house, and I had to pay for it because I can't handle any challenges right now, right? And I need us all to work together on this. So it did start a level of transparency in my home, where I would really start to explain to him what things cost. I would start to explain to him how things would impact um, what we're doing. You know, hey, you got to check your and take the cars and change out when we put them in the costly, and how we needed to handle them upfront and learn about them. So I was just explaining there, I had to meet him where he was. So I had to teach him about how the little things would affect, let's say that we have, because if I have an expense that I have to pay, I won't be able to get you a pair of boots or a
Mm-hmm.
toy or even keep the cable on, right? These were all things that were up on the chopping block. And he was very involved in that. And then when it came to my friends, I was very transparent on what I had. And because I did have such a good support system, a lot of my girlfriends would, carry some of the weight if we went out.
Mm-hmm.
But they also were willing, to exclude me too and not tempt me in certain areas. So I appreciate them being supportive to what my vision was And at the time, I couldn't really articulate it. It was really about, hey, I'm just trying to get out of this situation.
Right. So, and I'm glad you talked about that because I think as we as people, as we elevate, we have a difficult time breaking away from our previous mindsets in order to elevate and go to the next mindset. And sometimes, to your point, and what you did, you had to really retrain the folks who are around you. Like, hey, this is where we're going. We can't think like this no more. And if we do, we're continue to be right here where we're at, and we no longer want to be there. Now, with that being said, you said that your credit was a 508 when you initially got that house. Talk about, and you said that you understood some of those workarounds as you were getting the house with your credit being that. Talk about some of those workarounds and talk about some of the things that you had to do as you were doing the workarounds to build your credit up in that particular space.
Definitely. So, one of the biggest ones, I had a Gap credit card, and that Gap credit card, I think I owed Gap like $12,000. And
Mm,
I started a payment plan with them for just $5 a month.
mm,
$5. $5 a month. I did that for a whole year. Um, and that was just pennies to what that balance was. But that year got that account out of collections. And
mm,
now, even though they didn't reopen that charge card for me, I no longer had a collection. I also had 12 months of on time payments on that debt. And it was just being willing to do something versus ignoring it.
mm,
And I took on that because I learned from other people that it wasn't really about paying things off. It was how consistent could I be with monthly payments? Because a mortgage is a monthly payment. And unless you hit the lottery, you're not going to just be able to pay it off. So you have to be used to making a monthly payment every
mm,
month. Whether a statement comes or not, you should be like, yo, I didn't see that statement, but I still got to pay that. Right. So, though, that goes back into that conditioning piece, that it wasn't about, in my mind initially, I thought it was all about, yo, I have to get the money to pay it off. But it wasn't. It was about, can she make on time payments?
mm,
And that's
mm.
what started fixing my credit.
See, and I really want people to understand that this whole process, to your point, you said you were in that house for 3 years after you bought another house and you did not live in it. Talk about the patience, and I got so many questions I want to ask you. Talk about the patience that you need. Understand, like, yo, that's different, Alicia. You bought a house and you did not live in it, understanding your situation. Talk about the patience that you had to have, knowing that you wanted to go from one place to another, and talk about the mindset that you had to have in order to develop that patience.
So I'm gonna tell you what made that patience easy, because I wish I could say it was like hard. That tenant paid more rent than my mortgage.
Ooh.
So I was getting like this extra money, right? So part of it was like, yo, I'm getting extra money. And I think it might have only been like maybe $200, right? And I say only now, but remember, I told you at that time I was happy for a dollar raise.
Yep.
So I know what I would have had to do for $200, but I'm getting $200 and I'm not really doing anything else. That, I tell people, was like mind blowing to me. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize. So along my patience, it was like that $200 was rewarding me every month on me being diligent along the way. And I mean, did things come up? Yeah. At first I was afraid to spend that 200, right? I was like, yo, I don't even know. I'm like, let me keep saving it. Something's gonna happen. So, and actually, no, it didn't start at 200. It actually started at like 159. and then it ended up going to 200 at the end of the um 3 years. But it was it was hard. I mean, my girlfriends, they still talk about, I mean, I still have to deal with that. All the money I make now, they still mention like, yo, remember you ain't want to buy no curtains. Remember you ain't want to buy no furniture. And so was it easy? No. Did I get ridiculed and made fun of? Definitely. And even by people who love me. And I know they love me. Like, it was one thing for like the critics, but it was another thing. Like, people, they really in that season wanted to see me do better, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're like, yo, like, having curtains is important, and but I was really stuck. And my grandmom's very influential in my journey, and she used to say, girl, you got to be like a postage stamp. You got to stick to that piece of mail till you get to where you need to be.
Ooh, ooh,
And
I need to have some flex bombs on that one, boy.
and that stuck with me. So when I would want to like get weary, I would think about, she had all the best sayings, like, yo, I'm like that postage stamp. Until that mail make it to where it need to be, I got
Mhm,
to stay on this plan.
mhm.
And I actually walk with this key, and this is my grandmother's house key. I
Talk about
believe
that. Talk about
I
that.
believe key stands for knowledge empowers you. But the big part is I walk with my ancestors daily, and I've been
Mm.
charged with the responsibility to help as many people as possible reach their financial goals. So her story I get to share with other people. Like I said, particularly women. My grandmothers, and well, my grandparents, they owned real estate during a time where it was not popular to
Mhm,
own real estate and businesses. My grandmothers owned real estate in different forms, because at the time you could not get a home without having a man. She used to tell me all the time, Alicia, you can buy a house without a man. And in my mind, I'm
mm,
like, why is that even a thing? I know I can buy a house without a man. I'm born in 1984, right? That wasn't something of my era, but prior to 1970s, you couldn't, or it was a
mm,
higher interest rate to do it. So she would pay more money for getting purchasing real estate than somebody else who actually had a spouse or a man that could go on the loan with her. Um, so having that encouragement along the way was really powerful. And like I said, she had like the best witty, like old school grandmom sayings, like some super explicit ones that I can't share on here, but he definitely helped encourage me. And then there were also times that, I want to be transparent, I didn't always have cheerleaders. There were
Mhm,
times that they'd be like, yo, that's crazy. I can't believe you're doing that. And they really meant it from a good place. Their intention was really love.
mhm.
And I had to, at the right now, I have the right words, right? I realized that it was my calling and my purpose that God gave me, and it's not a conference call, right? So everybody else isn't going to understand, and I'm not going to have the words to explain it to them along the way. So it created some resistance and strife. And I'm a big family person, so it hurt to be misunderstood in those seasons. But look at it now.
Yeah, because if for anyone who has never ever been to Alicia's house, I love it over there. It is such a nice house, such a nice house, and the food is on point too. Uh, so so let's kind of shift a little bit. We're talking about folks who we know real estate is a pathway to generational wealth. If I am someone, I'm like, I got this amount of money and my credit's like a 650, and I'm like, I want to jump into real estate. This is something that I want to do. What would you tell them as some of the first steps that they need to take to jump into this particular industry?
So I'm gonna tell them first that they need to do an inventory on themselves to see what their risk tolerance is.
Mm-hmm.
Because how you execute in real estate is so many different ways. Some is gonna be, I want to go first with buying your first house. I If you can buy your first house, I think not just for me did it make that mindset piece I told you, like my son sitting on the door, owning that home, it was like instant, kind of like having a baby. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had this thing, I had another thing to be responsible for. So, and creditors and insurance companies, they view people who own homes as more responsible. So things actually got a little bit cheaper for me. I didn't
Mm.
realize certain insurance rates on my car, right, was less because I was a homeowner. At first I was a teenage mom living in the projects paying out the wazoo for my insurance. Then I became a homeowner and all of a sudden my rate was a lot better. I'm saving there. So I like for people to think that your first house may not be about building cash flow. It might just be about that first house to help you get to a place of being more responsible in yourself, and also on how institutions, financial
Mm-hmm.
institutions, particularly banks and insurance companies, will see you as more responsible. So if you got a 650, the first step I'm going to say is reach out to a mortgage lender, not a real estate
Mm.
agent. Don't start looking for houses. Reach out to a mortgage lender. And opposed to letting that mortgage lender pre-approve you for your max, tell them what a comfortable mortgage payment is for you. Because
Mm.
again, I am low risk. So I I know, right? Because I'm in the industry, but I want to let you know that that mortgage lender, when they give you your max pre-approval, they don't know all the expenses of your home. They
Mm.
only know the ones that show on your credit report, and if you have anything that's being garnished out of your paycheck. So they don't know what you pay for childcare. They don't know what you pay for food. They don't know what you pay for gas, right? So because they don't know those expenses, they may be pre-approving you for a house that you're not, or a payment that you're not quite ready or comfortable for. And also, I want to let you know that, yo, you got a lot more control in this. Like, take
Mm.
control of your finances and tell them that, hey, how much will a $1,800 a month payment get me? Right?
Ooh.
That's a big difference on, okay, if you're only willing to pay $1,800 a month, this is how much house you can afford. And then when you're out second with a real estate agent, you're now telling the real estate agent, okay, I understand I might have a max of 300,000, but I'm only looking for a house for 225 because that is what I can afford based on the quality of life I'm trying to provide and the other additional expenses that might not be on your credit report.
So with that being said, what are some of the things that you see people, some of the pitfalls that people run into when they're in a position to buy their first house? I know you gave a few that you just said, but just could you just give people some things to look out for outside of what you just said when they're about to purchase a home?
Oh yeah. I think pitfall wise is thinking that you have to be in that house forever.
Mm.
A lot of times we don't want to go through the hustle. As I mentioned, that first house was right around the corner from where I was living, right? So I didn't buy the house, my forever home, my first house, my second house, or my third house. None of them were my forever home. So it was being willing to have a journey and along the way. I think that's so important. Um, Another thing I think that is important, or a pitfall to look out for, is thinking that interest rates are everything, that
Mm.
you don't have to marry an interest rate. You
Mm.
marry a house, you date an interest rate because you
Ooh.
can refinance. So, as long as you qualify, which means that you have to keep your finances in order. So, a lot of times when people buy a house, they look at it like it's a race and they won the race the moment that they bought that house. It's over. I can do whatever I want. Opposed to saying that, yo, I'm still in the race. I have to maintain my finances because there are more things I want to do.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I personally never thought about it that way. Like understanding, like, hey, I have this amount of money right now, and this is what I can afford to do. I don't think people really understand how much control they had over this process. I think when they meet with like somebody who's in real estate or they're about to get a mortgage, right? They just kind of like give everything up to that person who's doing this process for them, and they don't really take that mindset like, yo, I got more control than what I thought I had, right? That's actually, can you just talk a little bit more about having that control over this process of, getting a house or getting into this industry?
Um, Well, I want to first say that as a people, we're conditioned that bankers have an authority, right?
Mm,
We view bankers like we view doctors and like we view lawyers. And there's a level of intimidation that often happens, particularly for African Americans. When we go to the doctor, we might be busting it up with the nurse, but then the moment the doctor walks in, we're like rushing and he's
right.
like, he's not giving us what we need. And we're like, oh no, it's cool, it's good, and we're not willing to actually use the service that we're paying for.
Mm,
And I believe there's some cultural things there, right? Like our parents probably conditioned us not to ask for help unless we really needed it. And I wasn't conditioned like that. My parents were like, yo, if you need help, you ask for help. So when I go to my banker, or when people come to me, I have to recondition them that if you need help and you're afraid to disclose certain things to me, I want you to know I'm here to help you. I actually work for you. You pay me. I don't pay you, you pay me. Let's utilize the service, and get your questions answered. So I think that's where we mess up. When we go to a banker, we expect them to just solve a problem. And we view the problem might be just, hey, it's housing. I just need a house to live in. Opposed to, hey, can you help me with figuring out how I can just get started? I understand that
mm,
this might not be forever. Understand, banker, you might not like this neighborhood, right? You've moved past that, but I got to get in the game.
right. Right. So now, with that being said, can you just talk about? I want you to really talk about, because you had to shift your mind in terms of how you utilize money, while doing a business, while purchasing a home, and all the other things that you do, right? How has your mindset changed about how you approach money? These days, I look at money as a tool, right? A lot of people don't look at money as a tool. They're kind of married to it. How did your mindset shift when it came to how you manage your money, how you approach money, and how you utilize money in the businesses that you do?
So buying that first house, right, is all surrounding about around that. It was one of the scariest purchases because I took out, I think it was like $80,000.
Mhm.
That's debt,
Yeah.
right? And I had already had student loan debt,
Hmm.
I dropped out of school. And in my family at that time, the conversation was, we don't get in debt. We don't have
Mm,
debt.
mm,
Debt is bad. And my relationship with debt was very scary. But when I started communicating with my creditors, right, that $12,000 Gap credit card that could have kept me from buying a house was a $5 a month payment that allowed me to purchase a home. So I
mm,
got to enjoy the 12,000 at that time. In turn, only paying back $5 a month. Now I might had to have paid that forever, but I got to enjoy it and I got to receive something that at the time I learned that, okay, instead of exchanging 12,000 worth of clothes, why isn't it better for me to get $80,000 worth of debt and now I have a house?
ooh,
So it's what you do with the debt. So that was the part of the conversation that I didn't learn younger, that I was just taught debt was bad. But what it was is what most people around me were exchanging debt for was bad.
mm.
That
Mm.
was the problem. So I didn't really, I tell people early on, I never saw a lot of money. My income never reached higher than 60,000. I never saved probably in my bank account at that time more than $6,000, and probably half of that came from a tax refund. I never actually got to hold a lot of money,
Right.
but I learned about how debt was giving me access to things, and I was
Mm.
building equity. And then with that equity, like I said, that first check for 30,000, and I didn't even get to hold on to that. I bought another property.
Oh, oh my gosh, Alicia, I just love listening to you talk. You dropped a gem. Debt, that debt turned into equity. Stay there for 1 second. Just talk about how people can build wealth from understanding how to leverage that debt and turning that into equity.
Oh, definitely. So, and that's actually the challenge I find with many homeowners right now. They are very cash poor, but house
Mm,
rich, because
mm,
house home prices are up. um they're building equity from the market. And what I mean by that, I'm going to do a simple equation so you guys can understand how it works. If you buy a house for 400,000, excuse me, if you own a home and the value when you go on Zillow, Redfin, says your house is worth 400,000, but you took out a mortgage for 300,000, you now have $100,000 in equity.
mhm,
Now, the only way to get 100% of your equity out of your house is when you go to sell it. So you
mm,
can't just go to the bank and get that whole $100,000 out. There are some parameters on how they view you actually accessing your equity.
mm,
Also, there is a fact that you can build equity from the market, meaning the value of homes going up, or you can build equity by just making your monthly mortgage payment. There's also the reverse to that. If the market goes down, home prices go down, that equity goes down.
mm.
Well, a lot of people are afraid that if I take out more than my house is worth, I'm now upside down, right? We're from the era of when people lost their houses because they were
Yep.
upside down. They
Yep.
so they think, right? They lost it because they were upside down. And what they to me, how I view that is, if you had have gotten the equity out, what did you exchange the debt for?
Oh.
So if you tap into the equity, and in this scenario, let's say you could only access 50,000 of that 100,000, what are you exchanging it for? Now, if you're just exchanging it to take your kids to Disney, then you might not want to really tap all the way into it. But if you're going to be able to tap into it and now be your own source of working capital for your business, and instead of paying 29% in credit card debt, you now are paying 10, 12% of your equity or your line of credit, that might make sense. But again, it's being able to have the conversation about what your goal is with the money. And I mean, for me, before buying a house, I remember every time I got a tax refund, I had it all mapped out, right? I was
Mhm.
going to do all these things with it. But then the moment that money hit my account, guess what? We was getting crab legs. Like, it was totally different. I wanted to enjoy it.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
working with a banker like me, I am a realist. I'm like, okay, I understand every penny you're not gonna put back into a
Right.
project.
Right.
So how much of it do you want to enjoy and understand that's wasted money, but it's meant be for your mental health. It might be so you
Right.
can stay on track. Like I said, like that $200 kept me on track as I was going through. I want you to be rewarded
Mhm.
for you making a decision and making a sacrifice for the long-term win of your family. That's the other part of it. A lot of people are like, man, I don't want to tap into the equity. I don't want to have debt. I want my kids to get the house. Well, do you even know if your kids want your house?
Oh.
You could be using that money to further them in their business, further them in buying another property, opposed to they may not want that house, right? Having that conversation. And I'm thankful to God that I learned the importance of having that conversation with my son when he sat on the door of the dishwasher. And now I can have those conversations now. Like, you know, are y'all going to want to do this? Are they even going to have the skills to be able to manage certain things? People like, man, you do this whole real estate portfolio for your kids. I'm like, yo, my youngest one, she wants in, but them other ones, they gonna sell. If God forbid something happen, they are selling everything, right? So the strategy for me, why not take out debt and buy more? Because they're really not looking to have one house to live in. They are looking for the cash flow potential. Um, and so I just, for anybody who has equity, you don't have to tap into it, but I do suggest reaching out to a lender so that you can figure out what options you may have with your equity, how you can maybe enjoy it. Um, but you don't get to eat equity. And this is my fear for a lot of people right now. And what I mean by you don't get to eat equity, you're going to have equity. You have
Mhm,
equity today because of
mhm,
what the market is doing.
mhm,
But then if the market turns and you didn't access it and you need some money in your pocket to pay your regular bills, or if you lose your job, you don't have access to it unless you
mhm,
sell, because
mhm,
you can't eat equity. You have to learn to exchange it for cash.
mm,
And that's
mm.
the goal. And if you learn how to exchange debt for cash to be able to buy something else or to further your income or to build your business, that's how you win in this thing.
Alicia, you are just dropping gems for days, and I love it. Because the reason why I love it so much is because I know so many Black and brown folks who are really in these positions that you're talking about because you were there. So you 100% understand, you know where they're at mentally, cash wise, and the process that they need to go through in order for them to get into this real estate game. And I appreciate your knowledge because it's just so many folks who just don't know and they want to get into these industries and they don't have a mindset in order to make that shift. How have you seen like the whole real estate market, especially in the Black and brown community? Have you seen, I know there's more people getting into it, but what do you think the hesitation is when somebody's like, man, I really want to get into this particular industry, but I'm just scared? What are you seeing some of these people's hesitations being in terms of getting into the market?
Um, I think the biggest thing is the risk,
Mhm.
getting in the understanding
How
that
how
there's
would you
risk.
mitigate it? How would you mitigate it? How would you what
Um,
would you tell somebody to mitigate the risk?
Well, first deciding what your risk tolerance is, right? So if you are a person like me who wants to have a lower risk, you need to sit down with a professional, with a banker, with a mortgage person, and already have in place what you're looking to do. Also, credit. Having
Mm,
better personal credit is going to be one of those ways that you can mitigate the risk, because if you need more money for a repair, um, or if you lose your job and you need to access money, you can get access to it. Credit is usually one of the biggest reasons why you can't access um, the additional funding you need. And remember, we're in the United States of America. When America needs more money, they create more debt, right?
mhm.
That's what we do here in America. We have a credit
Facts.
system,
Mhm.
and then guess what? It just seems like, man, one day it all works out. Or people, we have other tools that, I won't really put out there, but here you can't be afraid of the debt. But what can make you mitigate the risk is what you plan to do with it. And there's a book that I like to read every year, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Such a good book.
And I think it's number 4, where or tool for lesson 4, that talks about you can't buy jewels from a brickmaker.
Mm.
And what often happens, I feel like, in our community is that we buy jewels from a brickmaker. We don't actually find people who are really doing what they are doing, right? We're like,
Oh, I'm so happy you said that. I'm so happy. I want you to pause on that real quick. Social media, social media. I'm sure you probably be going through social media and be like, "What the heck are you talking about?" So, real quick, especially just expanding upon what you just said, where it's like I see so many people on social media, especially a whole bunch of black and brown folks talking about credit, talking about LLCs, talking about how to get real estate with no money, right? Or open up trades, business trade lines and whatnot. Can you talk about the role of social media and the whole misinformation in me? If somebody who I want to get my credit right, I want to get into real estate. Who should I? What are some of the things that I shouldn't be paying attention to, and where should I be? Or who are some of the people who I need to be paying attention to besides yourself?
okay, no problem. Well, I first want to say what social media does is the immediate and instant gratification. And the story I shared with you about myself, that's not always attractive. 3 years? What? I'm
That
not
is not
trying to do
attractive at
that.
all.
They
Nope.
said that I could go get in 60 days, get everything right. So it's the temptation to fall for that immediate gratification. It's the temptation that the brick maker is a really good salesperson and he has a way of sharing a story of this is so profitable, and he may have never done it yet, but it's so captivating because a lot of black and brown people, we are sold on the potential of hope, just like in the
Mm.
church, right?
Yep.
And I am a believer. I believe in Christ. I go to church, but we have to learn to expand beyond the potential of just hope
Mm-hmm.
and move into facts
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to still move knowing the risk. So it's hard for black and brown people to see the risk and say, I'm still going to go in this eyes wide open, knowing there's some risk there. They rather be led blindly and hope that they get lucky. So some of the people that I would say on social media, I don't really know, but I'm going to lead them back to a tool that is valuable, and that's reading.
Ooh.
Reading. I mean, I don't know a cheat code for that. You know, The Richest Man in Babylon is a book I always go to. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is a book that I turn to. And Robert Kiyosaki even has a game called Cash Flow for that you can play with your
I
family
love that game.
and teach them about, I've never played that game in its entirety, but that game, just getting comfortable with those documents, like when I'm training people, getting comfortable with a financial statement and an income statement, those are important. That every field, you could come from any walk of life and still be end up becoming successful. And you also could have the best paying job, be a pilot and a doctor, and still lose at this game, right? So that game is important. I also, just to throw another game out there, Monopoly. My
Oh
parents,
yeah.
my dad, he played Monopoly with us. And I tell people Monopoly, I look at it both ways, right? If you play Monopoly and nobody ever bought real estate, everybody would win.
Mm.
So since everybody is not agreeing to that, and you might be the only one carrying that philosophy, you're going to have to participate and buy you some real estate along the game. And then the other philosophy of Monopoly is a lot of us want to start with the hotel. You can't start with the hotel. You have to buy your four greenhouses. First of all, you have to buy all three, then your four greenhouses or your two,
Hmm.
and then you are able to buy houses. then you are able to trade them in for hotels. So I think that's the other part that we just lose sight of it. And it's so simple in a game form to see that you don't get to start with the hotel. It's important who you get your information from. Again, the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. It is important to really relate to stories and teach your kids too, like with Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the cash flow game. um but I enjoy social media, and I think you should follow as many people as possible, but don't be afraid to fact check it. Right,
Mm-hmm.
do your own research and your own homework. um and that's the part I think people just leave out, because social media is just a snippet. It's the clickbait, it's what
Yep.
gets the attention,
Yep.
and then you have to do a little more research to get some more facts, but not allowing the risk or hard work to scare you. You can go in with your eyes wide open along the way.
Let's shift a little bit now to credit, because I know you are a beast at that. So I got a 500 and I got collections on my credit, school loans, and I'm like, man, I want to jump into real estate, or I want to, start a business. What are the first things that you're going to tell somebody who's really in the process, that they really truly want to build their credit and they want to take the right steps in order to get to a 700 or 750, in order to, really change the dynamics of their life?
So the best way to fix your credit is to pay your bills on time. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're already at a 500, there's probably been some things you're either slow paying or have turned into collections. I'm going to tell you that you need to first really see what debt is yours and what debt you're going to need to challenge. So you could go to annualcreditreport.com, pull the credit report. It's not going to have your credit score on there, but it's going to have all of your credit information. It's going to have all those addresses that they ask you for security questions, right? And really clean it up. If you don't live at those addresses, let the credit bureaus know I don't live there. Take that off my credit report. Uh, Take responsibility for what is valid if it is yours. So then that means having the conversation with creditors. Hey, what is the lowest payment plan that I can pay? And then if really starting with the end in mind. If it's a buying a house, you should talk to a mortgage lender on what you need to tackle.
Right.
If it is starting a business, then you may need to start with, finding out if you owe any other government agencies.
Oh.
Because if you're trying to get an SBA loan and you owe money on delinquent federal student loans, there's going to be a problem. So,
Mm.
really having the end in mind first of what you're looking to accomplish, and understand that we all want to have great credit scores, to my almost perfect credit score. But
Yeah.
once you get past that 720, 750, for most things it's really just vanity. um and you may not even get as much debt. I've had people with 800s, and to the creditors, they see they don't even use it. So they don't even give them larger credit lines, right?
Oh.
So there is power in having what your purpose is with the money, and that shows that level of control, dominance, that I'm responsible. And that's what credit is about. Credit is a reflection of your character for somebody who doesn't know you. And back in our parents' day, credit wasn't really used for houses. Credit was really just created for credit cards because they were unsecured debt.
Yep.
So now that we're using credit in so many other ways to tell somebody's character, you got to understand it's really about payment history. And then what do you do when a collection happens? Do you just hide? Do you talk to them? Do you try to find a good faith way of paying them back? Right? Like, and then we all can hope that, there are things that you can get deleted off your credit report to improve the score, but getting them deleted does not mean that you're relieved from the responsibility. So
Mm.
I want to just encourage people that it can feel overwhelming, but how you eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
So,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, my 508 didn't fix right away. It started with a $5 payment plan on a $12,000 credit card. That started it, and then I was able to build on it. But we do got shortcuts, in the world of technology now. So with AI, artificial intelligence, I mean, you can use them to write dispute letters for you and include tax codes and dispute methods. I mean, for me right now, I think anybody can, if you are making enough money, right, to at least make your current payments stay current. And if you have collections, most of the time after they're 3 years old, they actually still stay on the report, but they no longer reflect in the score.
Mm.
So you could have a 680 with a boatload of collections that are 3 years old.
Stop. Hold on one second. Yes, I'm absolutely shooting a commercial in the middle of my podcast. That's exactly what I'm doing. But you guys know Elon Musk is over there tripping over at Twitter. So what did Instagram do? They created their own version of Twitter called Threads. I need you guys to stop real quick and go follow me on Threads. Go follow me on Threads right now. Malcolm Locks on Threads. I need you guys to go follow me. I post a whole bunch of good content over there. Of course, gaming, business, entrepreneurship, and of course, artificial intelligent news over on my thread. So, yes, once again, I'm shooting my own commercial in the middle of my own podcast, but hey, it is what it is, right? So, yeah, go follow me on Threads. Malcolm Locks on Threads right now. Yeah.
But because unfortunately people are buying, so all the people out there who is like, yo, I'm not buying no real estate, I'm not doing it. You can't win at Monopoly unless everybody agrees not to buy real estate. So since everybody is not agreeing to that, and you might be the only one carrying that philosophy, you're gonna have to participate and buy you some real estate along the game. And then the other philosophy of Monopoly is a lot of us want to start with the hotel. You can't start with the hotel. You have to buy your four greenhouses. First of all, you have to buy all three, then your four greenhouses or your two,
Mm-hmm.
and then you are able to buy houses. Then you are able to trade them in for hotels. So I think that's the other part that we just lose sight of it. And it's so simple in a game form to see that you don't get to start with the hotel. It's important who you get your information from. Again, the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. It is important to really relate to stories and teach your kids too, like with Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the cash flow game. um but I enjoy social media, and I think you should follow as many people as possible, but don't be afraid to fact check it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do your own research and your own homework. um and that's the part I think people just leave out, because social media is just a snippet. It's the clickbait, it's what
Yep.
gets the attention,
Yep.
and then you have to do a little more research to get some more facts, but not allowing the risk or hard work to scare you. You can go in with your eyes wide open along the way.
Let's shift a little bit now to credit, because I know you are a beast at that. So I got a 500 and I got collections on my credit, school loans, and I'm like, man, I want to jump into real estate, or I want to, start a business. What are the first things that you're going to tell somebody who's really in the process, that they really truly want to build their credit and they want to take the right steps in order to get to a 700 or 750, in order to, really change the dynamics of their life?
So the best way to fix your credit is to pay your bills on time. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're already at a 500, there's probably been some things you're either slow paying or have turned into collections. I'm going to tell you that you need to first really see what debt is yours and what debt you're going to need to challenge. So you could go to annualcreditreport.com, pull the credit report. It's not going to have your credit score on there, but it's going to have all of your credit information. It's going to have all those addresses that they ask you for security questions, right? And really clean it up. You know, if you don't live at those addresses, let the credit bureaus know I don't live there. Take that off my credit report. Uh, Take responsibility for what is valid if it is yours. So then that means having the conversation with creditors. Hey, what is the lowest payment plan that I can pay? And then if really starting with the end in mind, if it's a buying a house, you should talk to a mortgage lender on what you need to tackle.
Right.
If it is starting a business, then you may need to start with, finding out if you owe any other government agencies.
Ooh.
Because if you're trying to get an SBA loan and you owe money on delinquent federal student loans, there's going to be a problem. So,
Mm.
really having the end in mind first of what you're looking to accomplish, and understand that we all want to have great credit scores to my almost perfect credit score. But
Yeah.
once you get past that 720, 750, for most things, it's really just vanity. Um, and you may not even get as much debt. I've had people with 800s, and to the creditors, they see they don't even use it. So they don't even give them larger credit lines, right?
Oh.
So there is power in having what your purpose is with the money, and that shows that level of control, dominance, that I'm responsible. And that's what credit is about. Credit is a reflection of your character for somebody who doesn't know you. And back in our parents' day, credit wasn't really used for houses. Credit was really just created for credit cards because they were unsecured debt.
Yep.
So now that we're using credit in so many other ways to tell somebody's character, you got to understand it's really about payment history. And then what do you do when a collection happens? Do you just hide? Do you talk to them? Do you try to find a good faith way of paying them back? Right? Like, and then we all can hope that, there are things that you can get deleted off your credit report to improve the score, but getting them deleted does not mean that you're relieved from the responsibility. So
Mm.
I want to just encourage people that it can feel overwhelming, but how you eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
So,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, my 508 didn't fix right away. It started with a $5 payment plan on a $12,000 credit card. That started it. And then I was able to build on it. But we do got shortcuts, in the world of technology now. So with AI, artificial intelligence, I mean, you can use them to write dispute letters for you and include tax codes and dispute methods. I mean, for me right now, I think anybody can, if you are making enough money, right, to at least make your current payments stay current. And if you have collections, most of the time after they're 3 years old, they actually still stay on the report, but they no longer reflect in the score.
Mm.
So you could have a 680 with a boatload of collections that are 3 years old. So that is the thing. I think we just get really overwhelmed, and we want to do what's easy for us, right? It's like that
Mhm.
social media thing. Reach out to a professional. And what I mean, a professional, start first with you having some confidence. You pull your credit report for free, not caught up in the score with TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Go to annualcreditreport.com. See what it says about you first. Don't let somebody else tell you. You should
Mhm.
know what your credit report is saying about you. And then from there, and then I do have a book that if you guys want some
Go ahead. Plug
cheat
it. Plug it. Plug it.
codes in there, if you go to www.empoweryourfinances.org, you could buy my book and it will help you navigate in fixing your own credit. That way, if it happens again or life shows up, because like I told you, life be life,
They do.
you will be able to navigate and get yourself back on path as quickly as possible instead of having to rely on somebody else.
And we're gonna have Alicia's website somewhere in this description so that you can go buy the book. So I want to talk about real quick. Well, not real quick, but having the right when dating is difficult in 2023. It is difficult in 2023. How important is it for you to have the right partner when you're making some of these decisions financially, starting a business, real estate, getting your credit right? How important was it for you to have the right partner as you're traveling in this particular journey? The right
Um,
partner, the right partner.
Yeah. So I am glad to say I'm happily married. We've been married now for 11 years. And having the right partner did create a level of multiplication. So whenever you multiply by one, there's no multiplication there really, right? There's just what you can accomplish. But when you can multiply by two and three, now you're seeing exponential growth. So I think that is having the right partner, but understanding that you have to sometimes create the right partner.
Mm.
We didn't start out, Darrell and I did not start out as I'm going to say we were on this power couple mission. I think our second year of marriage, man, we wanted to divorce each other. Um, and we had to do like some extreme cutbacks in our home. Um, I at that time I was driving a 745 BMW. I thought life was great. He was driving a S550 Benz. We had all the kids and life was good. And then the real estate market turned on us. And we had to make some cutbacks. And I traded both of those vehicles in that had negative equity for a Ford Fusion. Okay. So again, this shows in my life that I'm willing to make sacrifice, right?
Hmm.
So I was I went from having the best car out of all my friends, right? And living and then driving this Ford Fusion. And that was tough.
Hmm.
And I think at that time I paid like a Ford Fusion might have been going for like let's say 20,000.
Hmm.
But to avoid me having a repossession or um, negative equity on the car, I needed a vehicle that could take the negative equity. So I had to roll it into a Ford Fusion, and I think I might have paid for a Ford Fusion back then like 32,000. Everybody thought I was crazy. But guess what? I learned about debt. So I'm like,
Hmm.
I can manage that monthly payment and I can protect my credit by doing so. But I remember my husband saying to me, I'm gonna have to go live in that Ford Fusion.
I can hear Darrell's voice saying it's so funny.
um, and we were going through it, right? And why a lot of couples divorce or break up or don't work out have a lot to do with money.
A hundred
Um,
percent.
So people are like, man, you guys were right for each other. It wasn't that we were right. It was that I was willing to communicate. I was willing to fight um, for our marriage, and he was willing to fight for our marriage and our relationship um, along the way. But neither one of us started out perfect. And I just want to say that because when I hear people saying, "Man, um, dating," when I first met my husband, I mean, I thought he was everything wonderful. But did my friends have red flags and my family? Yeah. I mean, did his mother have red flags about me?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So I don't think you find a perfect partner. You create a partnership that works for both of you.
Mm. Mm. It's hard out here in these streets. It's hard out here in these streets, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
In terms of, your spouse is your business partner. How do you guys navigate that? Obviously you got to make time for children, you got to make time for yourselves as a couple, and then you have to make time to actually do the business that you guys created as a couple. How is that shift from, oh, I'm parents, oh, now we're the couple, and then now we're business partners? How do you communicate through those shifts?
So I believe in partnership and asking for help. So I have several business partners. I have different businesses with other people outside of my husband,
Hmm.
and then we do have our partnership that we have in our real estate businesses, and it is tough. It's tough to navigate, especially our youngest is 11, and she got her dad wrapped around her finger, and and she's like, "Daddy, mommy's so mean, right?" And then, we're now like kind of spatting. So I have this line that I say to my husband all the time. I'm like, "Babe, you love me. And the only time you don't love me is when it has to do with those kids, right? Because it highlights some things that we will often overlook when it's the two of us. So I'd say for us, it's really the fact that I try not to let outside influences
Mm.
affect inside. And that is even our own children when it comes to our relationship and our love. Um, so I think that's really, really important. But you have to make time. I don't believe in balance because I can't give everything the same amount of time. I believe in harmony. Like, yo, what's gonna work for us? If Madison needs more time, I'm also gonna articulate that with my husband. Right. I don't want him running down the road, rushing to get home. And I'm like, and he could have maybe did some other things. So now he's looking at me and I'm like, yo, I'm trying to get our homework done. Right. You have to communicate as well. Um, and then I hate to make it because somebody might hear this wrong. Um, we both should be appreciated, but I do feel that particularly men, they don't feel appreciated and they don't know how to verbalize that they're not
Mm.
feeling appreciated. So and maybe, I am blessed to come from a two-parent home and see my parents. They've been married now for over 40 years. I have to actively do things to let him know that I appreciate his sacrifices.
Mhm.
And when I didn't really like him like that, at times in our marriage, I remember I would have to set a calendar reminder, like the 15th of the month, to buy him something. Gifts are my
Mhm.
love language, so that's how I like to show love. And it wasn't about the cost of the gift, but it was just to let him know that I'm paying attention to him and I appreciate what he does. And when things were like financially really tight for us, it was small things. It was like buying him a new pack of boxers because them other ones wasn't good no more,
Praise,
or
praise God for new boxers.
um so and and being a mother and having my grandmother, she used to say to me, because I used to get really upset and I'm like, yo, I wish he would tell me what's wrong. And she said, well, do you get that upset when one of your kids can't articulate what they need? Because you're like, yo, he
Mm.
should be able to tell me. But it's normal for people, you accept that your child can't. And what do? You try to figure it out. You figure out,
Mhm.
okay, are they crying because they're hungry? Are they crying because they're wet? Are they crying because they're hurt? And as a nurturer, why wouldn't I want to take that extra effort to figure out what's wrong with my husband? And I don't feel like I was taught that. Like I feel
Mhm.
like the information that I was getting from others was like, no, he needs to man up and tell me what's wrong. Um, but I realized that it was also for me to woman up and figure out what's wrong. And I
Mm.
often could probably get to what's wrong a lot faster than he could. So kudos
Mm.
to me, right? So
Mhm.
that was and really not trying to balance. I mean, balance tried to kill me, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this much time to Randy and this much time to Madison and this much time to Darrell and this much time to my job. And there are times that, guess what, my family is probably slighted. You know, I'm on the road, I'm traveling. They don't get to go with me every time I go, so
Mhm.
I can't give everything the amount of time. But if I can find a place of harmony, and then really asking the question, right, like, what do you want, to the kids, you know, like I could think, I remember with my son, especially because I'm coming off of the traumas of a single mom. I thought it was just buying him video games, right? Like, yo,
Mhm.
I'm gonna get him every get system. I never could do it before. And
And we
then
like that, by the way. As a gamer, we love it.
and then I learned that it wasn't just the system that
Right.
he wanted. He actually wanted me to watch him play. He wanted me to see
Mm.
how good he was. And that it transpired that I'm rewarding him because he's good at it, not rewarding him because I can afford
And Randy is not just good at video games. That boy is a beast
it.
on the court. That boy is a beast on the court. I appreciate that wherewithal to understand. Like, of course, on one side, men have to men up to a certain extent, and then on the other side, you as a woman understanding that you have to woman up as well. And I appreciate the transparency in the communication, because I think, as you being a wife and me one day potentially being a husband, I think that transparency and communication can really take you a long way. And especially when you're talking about those points where it's like, oh, I didn't like him for this point in time, where you gotta kind of like talk through that. That's not, you love this person, but I don't
Mhm.
like you right now. That's a lot. And on top of balancing all the things that you have to balance. So I appreciate that feedback. And I think we should probably do a part two specifically on like business and relationships and single versus married and all that
Mhm.
stuff. Cause I'm single. Oh, so we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
But
But partnership, I think that's the
partnership.
big thing. Partnership. A lot of, and if you can find partners,
Mm,
that is important. And I am blessed that I have a partner in my husband, but I also have partners, and being willing to understand what partnership looks like. Um, and again, another one of my grandmom's sayings were, you plan for the divorce when you're happily married. So um I learned that too, like with my business partners and with my marriage, right? Like, we know if we leave, like, somebody gets to like a shitty end of the stick, right? Like,
mhm,
it
mhm.
so it sometimes, again, going back to like that $200 kept me motivated when I know what's on the line. And I think we walk blindly so much, and we don't realize what it cost us until it's too late.
Oh. Oh, and that's not even just with a relationship, but partnerships. I like how you mentioned partnerships. Because yeah. Um, moving forward, and I feel like I could talk to you for a long time about all this stuff. Real quick, do you want to talk about your the rebar and the firewalking? Talk about the mindsets between both of those. Like, I want the people to hear about that.
All right, awesome. So I am a trailblazer, and I love to help other people blaze their trail and get to really understanding their purpose and transformation as quickly as possible. And what better way to get there than walking across some fire, right? Like, you get you to where you need to be real quick. So I am a certified fire walk instructor, and I teach people how to get to a place of transformation, to see themselves on where they want to go and what they want to become, because you need to have that why along the way. And then I think a lot of people our age, Malcolm, that place of being content steps in, right? Like, okay, I'm not in a poverty position like maybe my parents or how I grew up, and you get comfortable. So, how do you push yourself to those new heights, to get to a different place? And there's a method called pain versus pleasure. So most
Mm,
people will only try to reach relief. We do not
mm,
try to reach ultimate pleasure. So it's we will do just enough not to hurt, but we won't push ourselves to a place to really reach our ultimate level. And with firewalking, rebar bending, we're pushing you and giving you the techniques to push through pain
mm.
to get to where you want to be. Um, and I get a lot of pushback. People like, man, I'll never walk on fire, or I'll never bend the rebar. And the rebar is an exercise that we do with partners. We do with married couples. The power of partnership. But if you won't walk on fire and you don't want to do the rebar, if I tell you that, hey, you can walk on broken glass, you'll probably say I'll take a firewalk, right? So we really, and then walking on broken glass is completely different than fire, right? Like you can get through fire quick, right? We get through the fire quick, but walking
Mhm.
on broken glass, you can't run across broken glass.
No, you
And
cannot.
and hearing the shattering of the glass as you step down and move and navigate. And that goes into why I think it's so important to go through even knowing risk with your eyes wide open, right?
Mm,
Processing along the way. So again, I'm trying to help people get into their lives, become the executive of their life. So then they can become an executive within their business. But it does take first becoming an executive within your life before you're probably going to see the results of being an executive within your business, because you are going to have to display a level of discipline.
what are some of the things that you learned from doing the rebar training and walking on fire for you personally? How has that personally transformed your life? What are some of the things that you could give to someone that's looking for that transformation in their life?
So what got me into my firewalk short story is I had a partner who stole from me,
Hmm.
and I was really hurt. I didn't want to continue with the business, even though we were making huge impacts in people's lives and we were making money. And I was at a place of, I'm gonna say, selfish. I was like, yo, I'm good. I don't need the, yo, I'm good, And I saw Tony Robbins
Mm,
um do a fire walk with Oprah on YouTube, and it was during COVID. And I reached out to them, and they actually were not doing any classes because of COVID. So, and I do believe in personal development, investing in yourself. I have a coach who was really trying to push me, and my coach at that time said, "Yo, you're gonna need something more." Um, and that's who sent me that video, and I started doing some research because they weren't doing any classes, and I actually found out who trained Tony Robbins, and I
mm,
ended up taking that class to become an instructor. So at that point, that transformational point, let me really understand how powerful the mind is,
hmm.
and how I was seeing how my feelings and my emotions were starting to lead me, and it was leading me to a place of despair.
Mm,
And that had not been really who I was. But I had to learn how to control it.
mm,
And I hope they see a trend, and too much of anything is bad, right? Too
mhm,
much of control is a problem too. But it's also a difference of taking responsibility. And I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. So taking a responsibility to get a new result. But became a firewalk instructor. Now I've done over about 130 firewalks. And that is so transformative in my life on how powerful the mind is. I do board breaks like a ninja. I teach others how to do it in 6 minutes. Madison does them, and that's my 11-year-old daughter. And I just hope that, like I said, it's a part of hope first, right? keeping God first and knowing who God is. And then what are those tools that we can put in our toolbox when we're met with challenges and
Mhm.
obstacles, and how we see them, and how to see the opportunity through even the fire, right?
Mm.
Seeing the
Mm.
opportunity for the win, or to see how gold has to be refined, or how diamonds are made under pressure, right?
Mm.
We say all of those things figuratively, but how about when we put them to work in our own life?
Oh.
And
Oh.
now I'm sitting here to say that it has transformed my life, financially, mentally. And now I'm at the point where I'm helping others. So, another business of ours is Biz Fund Academy, where we teach people how to get into the lending business and become the lender themselves. And I'm not talking about life insurance, I'm talking about how to do business purpose loans, small business loans, commercial loans, for real estate, for investment properties, and how to do it without having to get a license. So we teach those things, and it's been gratifying that we've been able to create 18 six-figure earners and 3 7-figure earners in the last 18 months. And these are all things that happen after my transformational point, right? Of saying that, okay, I was good, but now let me help other people get there.
Oh, I think we're gonna need a whole for the business fund. That's gonna be a whole separate one. Yeah, we're gonna do a part two for business fund, and Matt, and we're gonna plug that here. Alicia, I want to go ahead round this and close this out. If there was three things that you wanted to give the folks right now in terms of transforming their life, what would be the three things that you want to give to them?
I actually just want to highlight back at the beginning when I said those 4 C's of
Mm-hmm.
lending to help them get to a point of where they can access capital for themselves, access lending, access money. The first one being credit. Credit is an illustration of your character for people that don't know you. How do you pay your bills back when people aren't watching or are watching? So, credit. The second one is cash. How well are you saving or not saving, right? What are you doing with your money? And when I say you don't have to save, but I'm going to tell you, try not to overdraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you can't say right now the ends aren't meeting, just try not to overdraft your account at this time in your life. If we can, that'd be the first step of that. Then capacity, what your debt to income ratio looks like, what your employment looks like. If you are looking to buy a house, you don't have to give up your 9 to 5 yet. You can still win with a job. Because if I hadn't had a job, I don't know if I would have been able to get here. As much as being an entrepreneur is glammed, and I am one now, having that W-2 helped me secure a lot of financing. And then the last one is the C for collateral. Don't think the cheapest way is always the best way.
Mm-hmm.
A house that needs rehab and fix and flipping. There's a movie back in the 80s called The Money Pit.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta know that you might need to buy that move-in ready piece if you don't have the savings or the cash, to constantly repair things. And I want to just give you those things to really, and if somebody asks you in the banking space for information regarding those 4 C's, is not because they're judging you, it's not because of the color of your skin. Those are the tools that they use as a matrix to see how you fit within the funding guidelines. So I want to leave you guys with that, because I think that's the basis for all things real
Mm-hmm.
estate when it comes to lending.
Where can they find you and where can they buy your stuff?
Definitely. So you can find me on social media at Alicia Cooper Wells, also at Miss Cooper Home Loans, MS Cooper Home Loans. You can go to www.aliciathegoat.com and find pretty much everything that I have, classes, next speaking events, as well as book. We have two books, one on personal credit and one on business credit.
So you have heard, and we're going to have a part two for Business Fund Academy because that's a whole thing in and of itself. So we'll do a part two soon. But Alicia, thank you so much for hopping onto my podcast, The Principal Protocol, and I appreciate you for dropping all the gems that you drop. Really, I just want people to know that you can do this. You can get into these industries and you can build yourself up. And there's a way, even when you don't even feel like it's a way, because there is definitely a way. There's a workaround for any and everything that you want to do. So thank you once again for popping on with me. And once again, y'all, this your boy Malcolm. Malcolm Locks everywhere, and it's the Principal Protocol. Peace, y'all.